I figured
Let's start
you didn't.
recording.
I grew up.
All right. We are live. Digital Roundtable. It's Wednesday, July 24th. It's hot, humid, beginning of good summer season, I think. I don't think it's going to be scorching, but it's going to be good. Uncanny humid in Austin. We have had some amazing rains going on the last 2 days. Sort of, end of the world type rain, which is good because we need it because the lakes are very low. So that has been very welcoming. City of Austin looks great, looks green, pretty. Everything looks plush. We have a great guest today, and today was the end of the Texas Public Power Association annual meeting, and we had some amazing remarks from state reps and senators and ERCOT people and PUC people, and there's a lot to be discussed about the storm and the restoration from Centerpoint and the 40 gigawatts or 50 gigawatts that need to be added to the grid in Texas by 2030. And I think we have a great guest with a great point of view to fill in the blanks and many of those things. And maybe she'll even pick who's going to win the election. So before we get going here, let's have our own John Sibley Butler play some music.
Front porch sitting in an old rocking chair. Sun is high, Texas sky. Garden growing and clothes all around. Rusty road when a car goes by. Storytelling, storm ago. The only place she'd ever been. Singing softly, this world is not my home. My memories take me back again. When I was young and Grandma wasn't old, how she guided me as I watched my life unfold. Anything we didn't really need to hold. When I was young, Grandma wasn't old. When I was young, Grandma wasn't old.
Woo! Thank you, Johnny. Always.
How you doing? Well, that was from my son, who's that is from my colleague there, Raina, who lives out on a place where her grandmother grew up and her grandfather grew up, and enjoys it out there. But yeah, well, I'm doing fine, Andreas. There's a lot going on, especially with the grid now. There's a lot of talk about where we are going, and do we have an electric policy? Do we really have a grid policy in America? As we go through another presidential election, there's lots of talk about what's going on in Houston, and when the governor of the great state of Texas orders a utility to get the electricity back online within a given period. I thought that was pretty interesting. Me being from a Louisiana, southern Louisiana, New Orleans boy, that's seen a lot of hurricanes. So I think that for the first time, Andres, I've seen that the grid and electricity is about to take precedent, if you will, in America, but it hadn't gotten to the political debates and et cetera. So maybe for the first time since rural electricity, if you will, the first time since Edison, there will be a consciousness about electricity, about plug-ins, the Internet of Things. How we really do not have enough gigawatts to do what we need to do. We just do not, and that's the way it is. And so I've found that to be very, very interesting. And I think what's driving it all that we haven't talked much about here, maybe we should have, is all of the connectivities, right? They're going to need to be stored, right? They're going to have to go in a place where we can really, really say, okay, this is where everything is laid out. And we got to think about that too. And everything you got to plug in. Everything you do, you have to plug in. But like me and everybody else, we just take it for granted. On the economy is interesting. Is going and going and going. Musk is an interesting person. He's going and going and going. And of course, now we've got with the presidential election, we should see a whole nother a reinvention of protest around what's going on in Israel and Palestine. I think Palestine, Texas is doing well. For us Texans, that's not the Palestine that I'm talking about in East Texas. But I think we're going to gear up. I think there's going to be lots of protests at the convention in Chicago, Democratic National Convention. Much like when I was in college there was a lot of discussions there. But I think we have to get back to what's important in America. I have seen people debate about things that's not important. We got to get back to from taxes to electricity, the technology that's going to make us go. When I say taxes, I mean for corporate America, and we just need to get back and talk about those things. But more importantly, we need to talk about the infrastructure that would allow us to compete with China. Now,
Absolutely.
It's happened. The center of influence is slowly moving from America to China. It just is. When I say moving the influence, I mean maybe everything from how we think about dollars, that is American dollars, how other people think about America, whether it's Australia, right? Whether it's England, right? Whether it's South Africa, whether it's Japan, whether it's Korea, and we just in a place in history where we need to talk about those things are important. To me, all the little stuff, quote unquote, that Americans think that's important, it's just not there. They're just not that important in the grand scheme of things. So I think we need to get back on track. One of the things we don't have, Andreas, anymore is that people ask me, well, what's the requirements to be president? Well, when I was in high school and college, you needed some military service. Well, that went out with my generation, right? And so here we are looking at all the technologies with not enough electricity to plug everything in. That's where we are now. And nobody's saying, okay, if you create that electric car, if you create that electric airplane, that all electric house, everything has to be plugged in, and nobody is giving any kind of thought as to where it would come from. What is our strategy? So if I ask you, Andreas, what's our electric strategy in America? What is it?
Yeah,
I mean, we
know,
spent billions of dollars in California. Well, I wouldn't say they screwed everything up, but it certainly didn't work. We spent billions of dollars. What is it? I don't know what it is.
Well, as you know, there is no United States of America when it comes to energy and power. There is the 50 states. In every state controls its own destiny, even though there is an Eastern and a Western interconnect, and Texas being independent from that. But with lots to unpack here, and I want to introduce our guest, Raina Hornaday, who is the general manager and co-founder of Caprock Renewables, and she's a good old friend, and she's going to be with us today. And Caprock is one of those early trailblazers that has developed more than 1,000 megawatts of solar projects, wind projects, and storage all over Texas, New Mexico, and even the Caribbean. And I think, when you think about renewable power and off grid and sort of the islands, any island, are, sort of heavenly welcoming places to all this technology. And obviously remote locations, where the co-ops and the ranchers and the farmers, make a living. So Raina, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be with you. Your podcast or webcast is one of my favorites, and love the music. It's always such a treat. Every other people should do more live music for interviews like this. It really is great way to set the table.
Andreas never told me that I made a contribution to his show through the music.
I love it. Thank you.
He never, I mean, thank you very much. I'm elated.
It's such a treat. Such a
Raina,
treat.
where are you today? Tell us.
I'm in eastern New Mexico on my family's ranch. And I wanted to be outside just to enjoy it. It's so nice, and sometimes it's really hot and very windy, and you can't leave the door open. You know, we always say you can't park a certain way with a truck. If you have to know which way to park. You have to open one door at a time. We really the wind is a huge variable living and working in eastern New Mexico and West Texas and all the windy places in the world. So happy to be here before school starts back, and just taking care of some things out here, and enthralled by watching Leeward Energy's recommissioning and kind of decommissioning of the Caprock Wind project behind me. I was hoping that they would fly a blade while we were on. I don't know if you could see that or not, but I'm certainly going to be out here watching for the next few days, and just feel blessed to be part of the energy transition. And
Sure.
you know, have done a lot of work out here, and I love it so much.
You know,
So
I was
tell us real quick, Raina, before we dive in, tell us a little bit about you and where do you go to school, and your journey into becoming a female entrepreneur, you know, on the transition, and then tell us a little bit about Caprock and maybe, you know, what's the latest and greatest going on.
Okay. Well, I graduated, luckily. So I mentioned earlier I graduated from a little school just south of here, about 10 miles, with 12 people from high school. Went to Eastern New Mexico University after that for my undergrad, and then I completed an energy master's from Tech a couple summers ago. I finished that, and that was really amazing. And it was one of the things I wanted to talk about, is the importance of, you know, we have a wind program in Tucumcari here, like 20 miles west of here, and Tech has this amazing master's in energy, and of course they have a huge wind and renewable program that's just incredible. We've pulled a lot of talent directly from that program, the wind program and the energy. But there's little programs like that everywhere. Macomb School of Business is a huge contributor to kind of our ecosystem in Austin with clean techs. And I have a great intern. Well, I just hired him for the summer. He was my intern this last semester. And these Macomb School of Business interns aren't, you know, I mean, they're next level. It's just amazing to be able to work with these kids and have their perspective and their passion. And I just love that. And one of the things I wanted to highlight today was how wonderful and important nonprofit work is, and just all the organizations. And I'm going to focus on Texas. I know John wanted to do a whole, you know, what's going on with the United States power grid, but I didn't prep for that. So I'm just going to focus on Texas, and I guess New Mexico. The Caprock project behind me was the first utility scale project in New Mexico. And it has everything to do with the nonprofit work. My dad was the executive director of Eastern Plains Council of Governments, and I'm working with some local governments now on different SoulSmart and different programs like that, Solar App. So it's kind of nice to come back around to the important work that he did. But one of his projects in the 90s was to gather met data from a short little met tower up on our farm right behind me. And worked with the state of New Mexico and a group out of California that ended up going out of business. But I would go with them to the Met Tower and pull the little chip and mail it to California. And we retained all that data. And the wind resource here is just incredible. Really, it's almost kind of a problem because it's hard for the turbines. It's really windy, a lot. So I'm just thankful it's not today and I can be out here. But I took that data after I graduated from college and went to a renewable energy roundup event that the Texas Renewable Energy Industries Alliance put on in Fredericksburg. And I sent you that. I don't know if you looked at it, but I have those posters, and I specifically love that poster from that event because I was there, and there's rainwater catchment folks there and energy efficiency folks and birds, bees, and butterflies, all the things. And then there was developers wind developers, and I'm sure Leslie Libby was there with something about solar. And so it was really cool, but that was my first kind of event. I think it was 2002. And I had this wind data, this raw wind, investment grade wind data, and interviewed developers there, met them, had follow-up conversations and signed agreements. And that's what eventually became the Caprock Wind project, which it's now 20 years old. It's lived its life. It's being decommissioned. It can't be repowered because those 1.0 Mitsubishi machines just, they're putting up 4.5 machines right here. So the technologies have changed, but it's really been great to be on both sides of that contract. Lots of learning there, and just great to be able to take care of a resource and take advantage of a resource, a renewable resource, and see what it's done for my neighbors and kids I went to school with that work there, and just lots of benefits to being able to do something in the middle of nowhere that's good for everybody.
Sure, Johnny.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the kind words about the Energy Center from McCombs, run by John Butler, one of my former students. Another John Butler, right?
Yeah.
And just what I'm fascinated about. I can go back in history, and like your father, my father was a county agent. I've mentioned this before. Had degrees in agriculture, and they were doing rural electricity, right, in the 40s and etc. And we know, if we look at the research, all of the farms were self-sufficient. There was no grid. They were all self-sufficient.
There was no transmission.
All of the electric milking machines were working. All of the lights were working, done by windmill. And so I would say that agriculture has always been way ahead on all technologies when it comes to technology transfer. So here we are, and you're back in your home area. You're looking at a rural area, and you're experiencing the same thing that was happening in the 1940s and the 1930s. You're looking at rural communities using resources from the wind, right, from the earth, to be self-sufficient. So the first question is, do you think there would be a situation where communities like yours would just be self-sufficient and completely off the grid, whereas places in other places would be, it would be on the grid? So in addition to having different kinds of energy sources, we have different kinds of communities and how they benefit. Is it possible right now for rural America to be self-sufficient again, based on your methodology, or does rural America do they have to stay on the grid? That's my first question.
I think it's possible for any size of a community to kind of island and have their own grid. And I'm working with some projects that are looking at that. And it's a big topic, especially with all the power outages we've had. I mean, all the folks that didn't have their power for a week in Houston probably would jump all over, hey, let's do, we're stakeholders. We have resources, and that's where distributed energy resources come into play. Like, it's no longer, hey, there's a big power plant and that's the load, and let's turn on the lights or turn off the lights based on that. There's so many, like the Cybertruck or the Ford electric truck. Like, I have a solar project right here and a battery storage project. We're going to see that more and more. But the disconnect right now is that the transmission planning doesn't take into account the distributed energy. That's not on. But the reason I think it's going to happen faster is with these big loads that are coming on. We all know, gigawatt data centers and stuff like that. Somehow they can get built very fast. And the money and the time to build transmission to that load is way, way lagging. So they're already doing short-term, like microgrid solutions for those things just to get through, because they're ready to turn on and they're making money, and we're using the data center and the AI. So we need that. But a faster way than the traditional transmission build out and planning is to put together smaller, like mini and microgrids. So I think we're going to see a lot of that. And then at the same time, the thinking around it's changed, and then the technology is just evolving all the time. Like we have calls with people that are putting graphene, like there's so much that's happening and going to happen. So all those things together, I think all the stakeholders will be able to provide resources faster, and we have to, right? We don't, this new information we have about how much load will be in Texas in 2030, that's not going to change. It'll probably get greater, if anything. So, transmission isn't going to be able to meet that timeline. So we're going to have to do other things. And yeah.
Rita, what I'm hearing you saying is all of our discussions here have been about how do you get energy back on the grid, on the main grid? How do you get it? You take the distributive and you get it back on the main grid. What you are saying, what I hear you saying is, why not have a main grid? And then you would have every city also sort of independent. It is not distributive in the sense that it's related or connected to a main grid. It's distributed in the sense that the source would come from different places. So here in Austin, Texas, we're going to have the regular grid. And perhaps in Great Hills, we're going to have another grid based on your technology. In Westlake, we're going to have another grid based on your technology. Or when we build other kinds of subdivisions now, going out 71, we just move to your technology and have a complete self-sufficient kind of deal with energy and forget about the main grid. Does that sound? So we went to the Abbott, governor of the great state of Texas, said, look, this is what we're going to do. This is our energy policy. Certainly we're going to maintain the grid in Texas, but everybody that's building new places now, new communities, right? We're going to go to Raina and say, this is your deal, and make it self-sufficient. So you got a bifurcation.
Well, you can, yeah. You can do that now. I mean, the city of Austin does their thing, but yeah. Well, that's a whole nother layer. Of course, it's important, but that's where I go back to the clean techs and the Texas Renewable Energy Industries Alliance and the Texas Solar Power Association and the Advanced Power Alliance. All the stakeholders in all those groups have a big history and a big part in how we got where we are with renewables in Texas. And that's why it's just so important to, and even the Renewable Historical Foundation, which I love so much, it's really important to take all the new entrants into the space right now and get them together and have them talk with the people that cited the president and worked on the first wind projects in Texas, and because there's so many lessons to be learned and it's not out there. So I think the stakeholders will come together, and like if we're in a community and some people in the community can afford to have solar and storage or whatever and have EVs, but some can't, but we all come together and say, hey, let's aggregate this resource. That's a way to bring the community together, and everyone, it's good for everyone. So I think we're going to see a lot of that. It's exciting.
So Raina, help us for the audience, walk us through, again, ERCOT is saying that they need to add 40 gigawatts by 2030, which is basically, grow 50% in 4 years versus the last 130 years. Not so sure that it can be done, but let's talk about it real quick. Give us a sense as a developer. How long does it take to do a nuke? How long does it take to do a coal plant, a gas plant, a solar farm, a wind farm? Give us a sense of that real quick.
Well, all the different generation sources have different timelines, of course, and the interconnection is a lot to do with that. But the key, I mean, I don't know. I didn't pull the information on how many interconnection requests there are for new coal and nuclear plants. We're replacing coal plants with solar projects all over the place. So I don't think there's many. And to John's point, there's a lot in China. But the key to renewables, to the renewable growth in Texas at a utility scale and large scale, which is a big contributor, almost 50% right now to the load, is the ability to store it. And storage has this really weird identity where it's not a renewable resource, but it's considered as the same. When we apply for interconnect for a storage project, it's the same as solar, but it's not the same. It's actually a huge advantage and benefit to the local network to have a resource that can be deployed. So I think storage is the key right now to making these renewables, which we have massive amounts installed, massive amounts coming in Texas. But everybody can, we don't argue that it's not a intermittent resource, but storage solves that problem. So we're seeing massive amounts of storage going in Texas at people's homes, Tesla systems, all kinds of different storage systems for individual homes. And then at, the Texas 10s, the, sub 10 megawatt projects that you can get through the process a little faster than utility scale storage. And then we're seeing massive storage projects, 500 megawatt storage projects. Storage is a game changer right now for all the technologies it can help in a big way with all the issues on the grid and moving forward.
So, but yeah, once
that didn't answer
again, great beginning of the answer. I want you to help us understand timelines. So if I told you I needed 10 megawatts of storage or solar or wind, how long does it take? What are the biggest hurdles? What's faster?
Yeah, so the 10 megawatt projects are being installed in Texas faster than the utility scale. But again, we're at the very beginning of the storage, it's the same, like we saw the wind boom happen, and then we saw the solar boom happen, and now battery storage has just become frankly affordable enough, and so we're seeing that. So the sub 10 megawatts, and I think one of our biggest issues with transmission in the grid and its disconnect with distributed energy resources, rooftop solar, or whatever it is that the distribution service providers aren't connected or regulated with the same, they don't have to go through the same processes. They're not treated the same at all as transmission. So the thought process is you can get through faster. You don't have to actually get, and wait in the large interconnection queue that's very congested by wind, solar, and storage, and all the other, gas plants and everything that are out there. So, my utility scale solar projects right now, and this is why I started, looking at other options, because right now, because of the congestion in the queue, and because of all the different, whether it's resources to build and, EPC, the construction, or the procurement of the system, it takes a lot of time. So if you interconnect today for a large system, it's years out. And that's if everything goes well, and all the different parts of the development happen smoothly, and then you have the financial stacks of the financing of the projects and the financing of the construction, and it's a whole other thing. And then these owners and operators. So it is driven by load, and so now that we have this huge new goal or new data point for energy, I think more of these big projects are more likely to happen than they were before this came out. And the smaller projects, I mean, I think there'll be storage, at distributed generation substations all over the country, because that helps with reliability. it's good for the community.
Right. I
Okay.
like,
And I think pairing
I'm sorry.
I think pairing solar and storage is important. I think that's going to be, you mentioned like everyone's plugging in, but they don't know where it's coming from. And I like you have been disappointed in California. Like they've been doing this forever. You don't have we don't have to put solar on Buc-ee's for all the EV chargers. Why not? That's huge. There's huge rooftop space there. Put a bunch of solar panels up there and it'll be better because that's a significant amount of load as well. So yeah, so I think we'll see full projects more and more. I've thought that for 10 years and it hasn't happened, but hopefully the next 10 years it'll happen.
Well, Raina, the fact of the situation is, I think it was Obama administration who really sort of said, we're going to do this, and of course start closing, the coal stuff, and then the next president, I don't think that he had a policy per se, right? So I like working at the local level. I like communities getting at the local level, but like a startup, where there come a time when you would say, we need resources to scale this, not only in rural areas, but we need resources to scale it all over Texas or all over America. So let's just take Texas as a case study. So we don't have these conversations that much about the impact of people creating their own quote, power sources. We just don't have those anymore. Will there come a time when your approach with Caprock would be so strong that you have the case studies, you have the business cases that would make I call it the Andre Cavalli grid, he designed it, to make that grid not obsolete, but an add-on?
Well, you're talking about private networks, and that's what I mentioned that some of these data centers are doing already. They're just creating their own private network and saying, as soon as you guys figure out what's going on with the big transmission, let us know. But until then, we're gone. We're already built. We're up and running. We're using tons of electricity. And they also prioritize renewables because they need to and they want to. So that's great. And that's where microgrids come in as well. I mean, and some of these data centers can be, they need to be near Dallas or whatever, but they're also in West Texas where there's not a lot of other things going on. So they can put up a big solar project and put battery storage with it. And that's a private network. So the transmission grid is so aged, and it needs such a crucial plan and so many crucial upgrades that it's just going to take a long time. And a lot of that is because the transmission groups the way they're incentivized is around kind of, building new projects and things. They're not incentivized to let us have a microgrid. They're not incentivized to cut down a bunch of trees so they don't fall on, like, they don't get any incentive from those things. So we need to work together and figure out a way where we can, restructure the grid. But at the same time, distributed energy resources are coming on every day all over, and we have to look at those and have some visibility to them because they make a huge impact on the grid, and they're not considered as part of these studies that we do to see if we can put new projects different places.
Andreas, I think it's a pretty interesting approach, the localization of energy.
Yeah.
Going forward in the 21st century. But I think,
well, I think, we have talked about, and we kind of, we can relate to the telecom industry and how sort of the old traditional wired telecom, fiber, ISDN, frame relay, DSL was overtaken by the wireless communication, right? Because you can build it faster, you can do all kinds of things, reach out more people, deliver all kinds of things in a faster way. And as 4G, 5G, and the next evolution with 6G, some places will never know what a wire thing was, except for termination. in connection of the central offices. But it's interesting that, as Raina said, that in many ways the genie's out of the bottle, and the data centers, which are owned by commercial companies, and the crypto guys, and and all these folks, they don't want to wait, and they need to run and make money. And the utilities are caught in between because their utilities have an old paradigm, if you will. Nothing wrong with the old paradigm. It's just old, and now they need to switch. And the question is, how do they switch, and when do they switch? And in the meantime, if you're a hostel, if you're a food store, if you are, a bank or anything like that, and you want to be reliable, resilient, you build your own microgrid so that if utility is not available, you can run yourselves. And if you're in the middle of nowhere, you just do your own thing and ignore the utility. And if you're a data center or a crypto guy, you may do the same. And it'll be interesting to see how that happens. Now, Raina, I don't know how much you've always been doing a lot of, utility scale stuff, but obviously there's a big thinking and hypothesis around the notion that virtual power plants and the edge of the grid and the EVs, hopefully millions of them with batteries interconnected to the grid, could be part of the answer of where does that, generation and how do you manage the grid come from? What are your thoughts on that?
That's absolutely is. I mean, it's the answer, and it answers John's question too. We don't have to do anything. It's already there. One of my friends has a Cybertruck, and I think haven't been strongly for or against them as far as liking them. They're bizarre, and attention getters, but I drove it and I loved it. But what I love more about it is that it's a mobile microgrid. You take that thing and save some lives. Like, the power goes out. The Cybertruck is incredible with its ability to provide power to power your home. You can be completely offline and the Cybertruck will power your home. It's just a very much bigger, I think it's the equivalent of 9 power walls. So, Tesla being here in Austin, or, based in Austin, and all the things they're doing, the virtual power plants are aggregating all the resources that are here and there and saying, hey, let's work together and keep it going. And so virtual power plants are happening, and they're really exciting. And I think the bidirectional charging from all the EVs is another just great opportunity. And we're going to see, but again, it's missing some things, right? Like, we're missing the connectivity, and there just has to be planning around that, and there has to be policy, and there has to be buy-in from everywhere. And that's why I try to be somewhat active in all the groups, because if we all can come together, and the Energy Institute at UT and all these different areas, we can do it. But I feel like everyone's kind of trying to do everything their own, but it's happening. It's really interesting that John started this discussion with the fact that, the farmers and ranchers were using solar and wind before their transmission lines, because we've said that for years and years. We developed 1,000 megawatts over here, right east of here in the Texas Panhandle, very windy resource, very receptive communities and landowners. And we said, we're just making it how it used to be. 1,000, everyone had a wind generator. So the 1,000 ranchers around here all had their own wind generators. And now there's 1,000, big turbines that are doing the same thing. And it's interesting to see how different parts of the country respond to renewables. And it's rewarding to do projects where people, like I said, they have to deal with it. They have to know how to act around the wind and the sun and the extreme weather, because they're out in it all the time. And then if they're going to benefit from it and keep their ranch in the family, keep their farm in the family, and then they are appreciative. But not every area is like that, obviously. And then another thing I wanted to mention that I'm super passionate about is the dual use for for land. And with the amount of solar panels, the amount of acres we're covering, you know, having pollinators and having sheep and things like that under panels. And again, keeping the farm in the family. You know, I don't farm. My dad was a dryland wheat farm. I don't farm. So that's kind of how it is, unfortunately, across the country. And so how can you keep the farm in the family without farming anymore? And renewable resources are doing that. I see that a lot. But the dual use is important. And another dual use that I love and talk about a lot, and we have, you know, webinars and conferences, and I spoke at NAPE last year with a whole group of, you know, thousands of oil and gas folks, is co-locating renewables with active oil and gas infrastructure. And it works. It's, you know, the oil and gas folks need more power in rural places as well. So that's all part of the energy transition, and it's all part of kind of the all of the above approach to maximizing all the resources, especially in Texas, and being neighbors and working together and taking advantage of everything that Texas has to offer, which is rich.
Well, let me ask you this. We know wind and solar. There are other sources, right? There's the stuff that comes from the ocean, marine energy, right? And there's geothermal energy. We had a gather to go off, as you know, in a port the other day. Then there's hydropower. I mean, so we talk wind, solar. Where do you see these other energy sources, such as coming from the ocean, such as, and that would be marine, I guess. And then there's hydro, right? And then there's geothermal. Where do you put this in your equations for providing energy, whether it's based on the research or for the future, as we try to move more toward renewable resources?
Well, I think it's a huge opportunity. I don't do a lot of research on the, you know, energy from the ocean. I think probably I've looked at some wave technology. I'm sure that's amazing and might happen, but it's just so far out of the realm. I don't know a lot about it, but geothermal will for sure. It is happening right now. It's very interesting. And that's awesome because they're using you know, oil and gas infrastructure to do it. So again, that's part of using what we have in Texas and their abandoned wells or whatever they are. So the geothermal and going underneath, and whether it's, you know, salt domes or different, you know, carbon capture is a big one that's going to happen, I think, that's really interesting. So there'll be a lot of things like that. That again, they still need probably solar as part of the source. So I think to the extent that these different, you know, energy sources can come together and co-locate, I think that's always better. And then it's getting the power to where it needs to be. So you know, and that's where we rely on big transmission, and that's where the CREZ line came in. And but I think another thing that we'll probably see is mobile energy solutions. So as there's technology that makes battery storage lighter and things like that, I think we'll see mobile solutions where, you know, you can go charge up a solar, you know, charge batteries at a solar plant and then put it on a truck and take it where it needs to go. Move it around to different places wherever it's needed. So I think that'll be an exciting part of the future too. But
Yeah.
Andreas does a lot of the good R&D work. I mean, graphene, I mean, there's so much going on.
Absolutely. Raina, real quick, your thoughts or comments on, you know, utility scale projects are clearly, you know, economically the smartest thing to do. Oh, there's Llewellyn joining us.
All right.
But they're big, and when you think about adding 40 gigawatts of generation into the grid, primarily renewable, and where do you put them? What is the challenge of siting these things?
Well, it's the land use. That's why I was talking about the dual use, because from a legislative level, we, you know, the last session and this next session, we're going to have quite a bit of opposition to land use for large solar projects. It's thousands of acres. So that's, and like I said, working in communities that welcome these projects, that need them, it's rural. So when you get closer to load centers and cities, you come across opposition for all the different reasons. So that's a big issue. And another issue is the insurance requirements for having projects in South Texas that are in a hurricane zone close to the coast. So and that's getting, it's getting more and more of a challenge. So it's really being able to build projects where they're welcomed and where there's room for them and get them to where they're needed. And I think technologies. Oh, the other thing, green hydrogen, John, is the other thing I think is
green hydrogen. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that needs a lot of renewables as well.
Yeah. Hi, Llewellyn. Say hello.
Hello, Rennie, and hello, everybody. I'm so sorry I'm late. I broke a tooth, and they assured me they could work on it, but they had other emergencies, so it's taken a lot longer to get the temporary. And I apologize profusely. But here I am. I have a few questions, Rainey, and as I haven't heard what's preceded, I'm probably out of line. But first thing I looked at some of your stuff on the web earlier, doing my research, and I was wondering, what is the average size of your turbines nowadays? What's their output?
We did cover that a little bit. I haven't been in the wind business for a while, but I'm very active with a lot of the development and the developers. The project here right behind me that I developed for this area was 1 megawatt machines, Mitsubishi 1.0, and there's 80 of those up there, and that was 20 years ago that was installed. So this is repeating, but there's another project going up right now with 4.5 machines. So they're enormous. They're just incredibly huge, incredibly heavy to get. I'm just fascinated watching these cranes put these heavy components up and shipping them and everything. So, 2 to 5 megawatts for onshore development, and then offshore developments can be bigger and are bigger. And onshore developments are trying to be bigger, but there's a lot of there's a lot of issues with those bigger turbines. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the other things I'm very interested and passionate about right now is recycling wind turbines. And we've developed and built a ton of these, and now they're coming to the end of the life. And what do you do with these? And we need to be thoughtful and innovative on recycling all the different technologies that we've built that aren't generating any more solar and wind and batteries. I mean, there's batteries from all over the world that are being repurposed in different ways. So I think recycling, I'm more interested in that than building new generation right now, just because so many projects that were done, 20, 30 years ago are like, there's not enough attention going towards it.
That's very interesting. As I understand it, most of the towers are steel, and steel, of course, is easily recycled. But the blades, which are composite of carbon fiber and fiberglass, etc., are a big challenge. Would that be correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that's exactly the problem. And so there's groups that are doing it, but I would like to see the turbine manufacturers do it. And, this project behind me, when we did those leases, there weren't decommissioning provisions at that time. So Leeward Energy owns this project now. Technically, they wouldn't have to decommission it because it's not in the contract. They're a great company. They're going to do the right thing and take it down. But then where does it go? I mean, we don't want to know. We don't want to know where these blades are going and how they're being dealt with. But there are companies that are doing it. It needs a lot more attention and a lot more money behind it to process all these. And then it's a great recycled resource. It can be used for other things. And so recycling and along with energy efficiency is a big part of what we need to educate and do. in this industry and all industries. So recycling plastic and making containers out of that. And, that's the other thing. There's millions of containers being brought over from all over the world for these battery storage projects. And we need to be making our own containers out of recycled material. So I'm interested in that.
I'm right with you on that one, and I think it's very interesting. The follow-on and logical question is, what about recycling solar panels?
It's happening. It's happening. So it can be done. Emily O'Leary on LinkedIn is somebody I follow and know, and she's awesome and passionate, and she's recycling solar. And she's really educating on, hey, there's waste in construction of everything, right? But certainly construction of all the components to a big renewable project. So we need to recycle at that time, and we need to recycle as they're damaged by hail or whatever it is, and we need to recycle at their end of life. So, and it's important. I mean, I think technology is going to change to where solar will be available in many, many other ways than massive solar farms. So
The Economist magazine just did a whole issue on the environment, and it really pushed solar very hard, as though it would be the dominant source of electricity in many countries in the foreseeable future. Do you feel that way? Do you think that solar will, if there is a battle between wind and solar, that solar will ultimately be the outright winner?
I haven't really thought about that specifically. They're very different technologies. They're very different from a construction point of view and land management point of view. That's why the solar sheep are such a big deal, because the O&M on these massive solar projects in East Texas that get all this rain is incredible. I mean, it's just really interesting. I would like to see co-located projects. Wind and solar can be next to each other. And then before you got on the call, I just said, which everyone knows, but battery storage is what makes it work, right? It saves it captures the intermittency, and that then the wind and the solar can be deployed when it's not available. And that's the game changer, I think, for it. So I'd like to see co-located projects, but solar's an amazing resource, and it's being deployed all over. And Texas we're just lucky that there's so much privately held land, and there's so much land that we can do big, massive projects. And yeah, so the landowners, a lot of my landowners, I've had landowners that are energy executives themselves, and they've had their ranches in their family since the late 1800s. And so it's really many times a win-win. It's beneficial for the community. It's beneficial for, we need it in ERCOT on the grid. So it's really rewarding to see these projects. But at some point you get to a limitation, especially in smaller states and New England and stuff. Community solar and these smaller projects are happening, but there's no room to do utilities.
You're so right. There's already pushback here in Rhode Island, where I am at the moment, against using open land for solar projects, or more so using arable land, farmland. My final question is, I see a lot of this use of land, and yet standing next to it are railroad tracks, marshalling yards, all sorts, parking lots, all sorts of open areas that in theory could accommodate the solar panels which are being installed in fields. And what sort of incentive do we need to utilize the resource of underused roofs, underused parking lots, underused rights of way?
I agree with you so much on that point. And, I think we're going to see incentives for more locally produced power of any kind, but solar. But that's, Buc-ee's or IKEA's or all these big warehouses, they should be covered. The roofs should be covered in solar. That should be the solar farm on top of these roofs. And, and carports 100% carport should be solar, especially with EVs. You know, it just, that should happen across the nation. And it is happening in a small way, but it should be placed, especially in land constrained areas like Rhode Island and all of New England. The other thing I wanted to mention that I didn't about the new technologies is floating solar, you know, and solar ponds and also, you know, reclaimed areas that were waste facilities or Superfund sites. Like let's be more meaningful about putting projects places that other things can't grow or can't be built on, because solar's doesn't need a lot of anything. It doesn't need a lot of water. That's a really good thing about it, right? It doesn't need a lot of attention. It needs the maintenance and then, you know, basically keeping underneath just under control. So it doesn't need a lot of attention. It can be wherever. But I think we're going to see floating solar in the next 10 years come.
Johnny.
I think that's, I find with quite, sorry, let me just finish up.
Yeah.
Great Kariba Dam on the Zambezi River between Zambia and Zimbabwe. They've got very bad water flow at the moment, and so there's a tremendous electric shortage. But they're going to float on the dam, which is the largest man-made water impoundment, I think, on Earth. They're going to float solar panels, which will be revolutionary in Africa and a very interesting development. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I came in late and have hogged the time since then.
Good to see you, Llewellyn. It's always good to see you. And you know
It's
what,
always a
Llewellyn,
pleasure. I thought for a moment, because I'm doing it on my phone and it doesn't show everybody all the time, and because I didn't have time to fiddle with it, I thought you weren't on, and my heart skipped a beat before I cheered up.
Llewellyn, the great thing about this, thank you for the kind words, but the great thing about this, it makes our issue a new frontier. So I think you would appreciate this with the historical component. It looks like we're going back to the future. You got the local economists and local communities taking charge with new technologies. And then we have the evolving the traditional grid, which is there with the substations and et cetera. So it's almost a new frontier. And when we add all of the hydro and the renewables in, it is certainly a new frontier. Now, what I mean by new frontier, we just haven't thought much about these things, right? We haven't just, you know, everybody's, oh, we're going to have solar, we're going to do that. But we really haven't thought much about putting together communities that really don't need a regular grid. They don't need to be on the grid. They do their own grid, right? And remember, we started like that, and then we put them all together. So I think it goes back, Llewellyn, to say, look, we are in a new frontier now. And when I say that, I mean the thinking patterns have to change. Andreas, we need to have a conference on rural America, right? Electrification of rural America, and of course renewables. The fact of the situation is perhaps rural America don't need to be like New York or Austin, right?
Sure.
So I'm gonna request that we have a guest speaker on rural America, and that might be the woman that we're talking to right now to come in and give a keynote on what, you know, if we have room on what. I know I'm planning the conference right here. You know Llewellyn. Llewellyn knows how I am. I'll take over in a minute. He knows me. But seriously, I really think, Andreas, we're in a new way of thinking. I don't think many people in America are thinking about combining. Oh yeah, we talked about renewables, but we haven't talked about it in terms of regional, city size, and the ability of communities to take their own energy in their own hand.
Well, and it's
There is a
education. It's all about education. You know, we talk to small towns that have no plan for distributed resources and don't know. There needs to be education. And again, that's why I think working with groups, you know, Texas Solar Energy Society, SoulSmart, people like that are engaged, we have to all work on that so we can have a really smooth way forward instead of a struggle, which is, how do you do it? You know, we don't have funds to invest in it. I really would like to see more education throughout the stakeholder stack?
The National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, I think, would be very interested in such a conference. If
Sure.
Johnny, they've done a lot of work most recently trying to get broadband into rural areas where it still is not universal, and where the
Correct.
argument is very much like the one that attended electricity in the 1930s, where it doesn't pay to go to Europe to put in the infrastructure, and there are federal programs to help now. But the other thing is microgrids are not confined to your rural places. I mean, a university might put in its own microgrid, etc. I've not been passionate about it myself. I know that the large utilities, and I've talked to quite a few CEOs, are not enthusiastic because they think it's expensive. And in a sense, I think it subtracts from their operation, and that concerns them in some way. As a former head of the American Electric Power Company said to me, he said, the word is micro, and that's what, basically scares us all.
So let me try to wrap this up by coming back to something that we talked at the beginning that it's kind of daunting when I keep plotting the numbers, Johnny. It's all about the numbers, the data. So today, Texas is a 31 million population state with 85 gigawatts of peak and a $2.5 trillion economy. If we listen to ERCOT and all the demand that is upon Texas by 2030, and we deliver the 130 gigawatts of power, we would reach a $3.8 trillion economy and potentially have a population of 47 million people in 4 years. What are your thoughts?
Wow.
My thought.
It's
Go
just
ahead,
interesting
Renee.
because when you add in, you're right, the population moving toward jobs and opportunities, electricity providing jobs and opportunities, as the number of data centers evolve, a lot of them going to evolve in Texas. So what's driving it is the opportunity structure. It's the same thing that drove us to California during the gold rush, drove us to Detroit when Detroit was the Silicon Valley of the world. And that's why we have to prepare. That's why we need more discussions. And when Detroit was the Silicon Valley of the world, most of the resources went there. I think for those of us who can remember that, I mean, to me, Silicon Valley is new. Austin, Texas is new. But that's why we need to prepare. You just gave the best reason for us to have a conference.
I think your preparations are going to have to figure very largely around water. California and its huge expansion had severe and still has severe water problems. But Texas, looking at the basic water resource of Texas, it suggests it will be very difficult to sustain a population of around 40 plus million.
It's a lot.
You're close and you're already feeling water stress, and water stress will increase quite substantially if you add another 10 or 20 million people.
Yeah. Raina, what are your thoughts on those numbers?
Wow, as well. I was gonna mention water because like with green hydrogen, it needs a significant amount of water. Water out here is kind of like we treat it like we treat the other the resources. It's not renewable, but we have a major water issue in this country. So figuring out technology around water usage and reclaiming, water that's been used for something else, I think is a big part of what we need to do to make this work going forward with however much the population is going to grow.
Ben Bonds, I call him Governor Ben Bonds, in our 10, 15 years ago, wanted to put pipes from Louisiana where we get all the water in storms. And just like we have pipes, underneath the country that transfers petroleum, why don't we have pipes transferring water to California, transferring water to Arizona? The other thing we can do is that Texas can just go ahead and make that whole part of the United States, Texas, and get rid of the administration out there. Now, we don't think it'll take a war, but maybe we'll just colonize y'all, Arizona. We colonize California and colonize Arizona and make everything good.
I think your imperial ambitions will run into a little opposition here and there. The enthusiasm you have for Texas is not, how can I say it, universal.
Well, it's the resource. This is not church. We're looking for resources, and we want people to like us. We want to provide jobs for people.
You're going to have to take a look, actually, at water in the United States, and there are no quick answers. We're overtaxing our aquifers. The rivers are pretty well known. We're using as much water as we can. The Colorado's in trouble as a result. And we're going to have to look at water. We're going to have to look at ways, think what we can do by way of desalination. And the problem there, apart from the cost, the problem there is what you do with the salt. The salt is a huge problem. Millions of tons of salt. We don't know what to do with it. And oddly, you can't just put it back in the ocean because it doesn't integrate again. It doesn't assimilate. It tends to settle along the bottom in a very toxic way and kill everything it encounters, because concentrated salt is a very destructive thing. So we may want to find ways of reintroducing salt into the ocean without a deleterious impact. If you solve the salt problem, you could probably solve a lot of coastal water problems with extensive desalination. Technologies will improve and the cost will come down. That is the story of technology. We have the challenge, we should be working on it. I have this enormous confidence in engineering, that engineering solves the problems it creates as it goes along. If you look at desalination, it's an engineering undertaking. The salt is a problem that comes a collateral problem, and it has to be dealt with, which will greatly change the ability to use, convert ocean water. We also have to think a lot more about the intelligent use of grey water. We can't throw it all away every time because we've had a shower in it.
Yeah. Raina, final thoughts. What are you going to be doing the next 90 days? What's going on?
Lots of planning, lots of looking at the development pipeline and seeing which projects will work, helping other groups that are looking at projects. And it's really just connecting funding and the financial stack for development with projects that are ready to build.
So maybe you should join us at the... I was going to say, maybe you should join us at the Youth 360 Summit, September 24th through the 25th, and put you on stage and talk about either sustainability or energy or both.
I would love to. I have it on my calendar every year, so I'd love to make it this year. And just, we need to get projects, in the ground and online. So I'm going to be working on that and working with Clean Techs and Texas Solar Energy Society and Soul Smart, and just education, just getting people educated on the benefits of the different renewable resources.
Excellent. Final thoughts, gentlemen?
So that's my form. Well, I think it's just absolutely fascinating. I think that it makes you think a lot about old paradigms and new paradigms. It makes you think a lot about where are we really going. But more importantly, it brings the local, to me, community back into the equation. So Lukenbach, Texas is not going to complain anymore about energy. Let's just get it on and let's go see Raina and we get Lukenbach straight. And that's what's fascinating. That's what's fascinating to me about the conversation, because we are how we think we are, and the future is how we think about the future and how we create the future. So this is good, because it's really stimulating for me to think about electricity in a different kind of way, and that is bringing back in agency by people in communities.
There you go. Llewellyn?
I quite agree. First, I want to apologize again for my delay at the dental. I'm sitting outside in the parking lot of the cell phone. I'm so sorry, Raina. The little bit I heard was totally fascinating, and I hope you do come to the meeting and we get to talk again. And possibly you would like to be a guest on my television show. I'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Good luck with your dentist appointment. It was great to see you. I'm honored to be on the show.
Johnny, take us away.
Yes, sir. I do that. Riding on the city of New Orleans, Illinois Central, one day morning rail. 15 cars and 15 restless passengers, 3 conductors and 25 sacks of mail. All along the southbound Odyssey, the train pulls out Kankakee and Rumpus Pass. Things at time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That was
Take
amazing.
care.
Thanks. Have a great
Bye
day.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Because I'm working with rural communities and we need to talk about that. I like that. Okay. Au revoir.
All right.
Take
Bye.
care. Good to see you.